G'day guys, so today we're looking at how I would set out sort of a rehab program for someone that suffered like a calf strain. So in this case we're going to go with a sort of a grade 2 calf strain, and how we want to focus on our rehab for all injuries is going to be sort of a phase based progression. So if we sort of draw just a very loose sort of overview, we've sort of got at the start our three phases that we're going to have, and that's to essentially settle the pain down. We're going to go through sort of a strength phase, and then we're going to go to a return to sport sort of phase. So if this person, for example, has done their calf playing, rugby or running or, some sort of jogging sport, essentially in the first sort of like 1 to 3 days, we want to try to like settle the pain down. So we want that pain, so P for pain, we want that to settle down. Now we will have to do this with things like PRICE. So PRICE is an acronym that stands for protect, rest, ice, compression and elevation. That is an E, believe it or not. So in this phase, or in this acronym, the PR, in my opinion, is the two most important things. We want to protect it from further injury, and we want to rest appropriately. So what I mean by that is we don't want to annoy it or piss it off anymore. If we do that, we're going to make it a little bit worse, or it's going to slow our time in the settle phase to make it longer, and we can't get into the strength phase as quickly as possible. The rest is relative rest. It's not absolute rest. It's not get on the couch and do nothing, watch Netflix. It's none of that. It's resting the site of the injury and then being as normal as we can during this phase relative to the injury that you have. So this is for all injuries, or sports-related injuries for that matter, that I deal with. We then have the ice, which is ice compression and elevation. Now icing is good to do when you're able to do it because you've got your feet up finally at the end of the day or something like that. Pop some ice on it. Pain gate theory, whatever you want to use it for, or if it's the whole swelling reduction or vasoconstriction of the blood vessels, it doesn't overly matter, but it's not going to do any harm to you as long as you don't give yourself an ice burn. So the amount might be 3 lots of 20 minutes, something like that. Moving on to compression, you can wear compression all day. You don't have to sleep with it on, but it's not going to do you any harm. You can have it on. It might make you feel a little bit more supported. So great, have compression on. Elevate it, same thing. If you're lying on the couch, just make sure you have your leg up above your heart. We know that elevation works really well with high amounts of swelling. Whether it helps a whole lot when you are dealing with a grade 2 calf strain, hard to know. But whilst you're there, you may as well be doing it. Okay, so once we do that, we want to make sure that in this settle phase that we are getting walking, walking back to as normal as possible. So that's making sure that when you're taking your strides, it's normal, but with respect to hurting. So the whole protection thing coming back up here, we want to make sure that we are not hurting your calf by walking. Now, a little bit of discomfort is okay, and you might say, well, how do I know whether I'm hurting or not? Think about it this way. Like if you do something to the calf and it takes you a whole day for it to settle down after doing it, probably what you did wasn't very good. Now, if you're walking on it and you're trying to walk as normally as you can and you stop walking for about 5 minutes, the calf gets a bit sore and then it's back to normal after that, probably what you were doing is okay, and that was a decent amount to push and you weren't doing yourself any harm. So just keep those sort of spectrum in mind. Now, once we've done that, got our walking back in this phase, we want to start doing a little bit of obviously rehab as well besides the walking. So something like a 2 foot sort of seated or standing calf raise is a nice little way. Just get some early strength in there. And once we sort of tick these boxes, the pain's settled, we're walking normally, we've got our 2 foot sort of calf raise happening here. Great, we can probably look to try to move on to the next phase. Now, with this protection thing, if you can't walk normally, you might have to, use some sort of adjunct to get you around. So, had a patient recently, works her own business. She has to use a single point stick to get around, or like a crutch or something, just to get off that calf, just that little bit, so that she can walk normally, but not irritated. So that's the whole idea of relative rest. We're not just putting her on the couch, we're going to give her a crutch so that she can get around normally. And then when she's ditched the crutch and we're able to do 2 foot calf raises, maybe even into a 1 foot calf raise, we're then happy to move her on to the strength phase. Now, in this strength phase, we want to be doing our sort of targeted exercises, I suppose. So that's the calf. So in our calf, we have got our gastroc, which is our big muscle up the top of our leg. Okay, what's going on here? Gastroc. Yep. And then we've got our soleus, which is just underneath, just off to the side of our calf. Now, generally speaking, gastroc you target a little bit more with your standing calf raises. And then your soleus you target a bit more with your seated calf raises. Now, both are important, but probably coming to light recently in some literature is that, with things like jogging, your seated calf raises and your soleus is probably something which we don't put enough attention to. So really trying to incorporate some seated calf work and loading yourself up is going to be super important for you. Now, this is the first half of the strength phase. So this gets you the muscle nice and strong, but we also need to get the muscle working in a way which is representative of you jogging and using it plyometrically for the use of a word, so explosively. So we need to also think about, well, how can we, how can we get you back to being explosive? And how we're going to do that is by looking at doing a hop progression. So things like your hopping. So that might be on, one leg going on to 2 legs. Sorry, I completely stuffed that up. So that might be, 2 foot hop, progressing to a 1 foot, 1 foot hop, and then looking to increase that. So this might be, you make it harder through increasing the distance or increasing the height of the jump. Increasing the number of reps, increasing the number of sets. Either way, we're just trying to improve the capacity of your calf. So how we know that we're hitting the targets we want to do, quite an easy way is to compare your single leg calf raise from your left side. For example, in this person, we'll say that the right side's the injured side, so I would make my patient do left calf raises, seated or standing or both, to absolute fatigue. Record that number, get them to repeat that on the right leg, record that number, work out the difference, and then try to get those numbers to sort of match up so that I know that they're at least even strength to the other side, and then probably trying to add a protective effect by making them a little bit stronger above that. So if it was 15 calf raises on the good side, which is the left side, we might try to get the good even up to 18 or 20, and then the right up to 18 or 20. Once they can sort of achieve this basic level of strength and this basic level of explosive stuff, in this phase we want to have probably tested their running before we let them get back into their sport, if it was jogging or footy and things like that. So we probably have a marker for you to progress into the next phase as being can you jog a certain amount, distance, what have you, and this will be proportionate to the sport that you are doing. Okay, so once we know then the strength phase, they've got good strength, they've got good explosiveness, we know that they can run to an extent, then we want to put them back into not sport straight away, but into a sporting type environment. So in this return to sport phase, we are looking to definitely sort of increase their sort of running capacity. So we'll just put cap for capacity. So if we know that this person, for example, let's just go with a jogger. This person wants to jog, 60 minutes, and that's the goal. Obviously we can't really say their rehab is done until we've actually got them up to that 60-minute goal. So just know what you're trying to get yourself back to, because if you were just trying to get back to walking at home, then probably we could have stopped at this strength phase. So we know this one person wants to get back to 60 minutes. So we might have to do a jog walk program of, let's say, start off with 10 minutes, and it's a 1:1 ratio. So you do 1 minute of jog and 1 minute of walk. until you get a total of 10 minutes of jogging or on time. And so you've at least got a 10-minute capacity. After a week or however long, we reassess, and you know that you've tolerated that. So you're able to tolerate sort of this amount of effort. You didn't get any repercussions the next day. 24 hours later, symptoms were good. We tolerate that level for a week, and we might be doing, by 3 sessions for that week. We can then go on and do, 10 minutes with a 1:30 if we wanted, or we could do 15 minutes back at the 1:1. It really just depends on like what you want to go with and what fits into your schedule better. As this is a made up person at this point in time, it's hard for me to say that, this is the number one way to do it. It really does depend on the person that's in front of you as a physio. But if you know that you're probably going to prefer to do it a certain way, then great, do that. But it's got to make sense. It can't just be 10 minutes 1:1 and then all of a sudden you're doing 20 minutes without rest. That just doesn't make sense. You've got to just keep thinking about, well, my muscle's not tolerating this. So a nice progression might be 10 1:1, and then we go down to just change one variable, which is time. So we go 15 minutes 1:1, and we might tolerate that for another week, and then we're going to go to 20 minutes 1:1. Now, realistically, if you're doing 20 minutes of 1:1, we can then probably go back to the start and probably get rid of this ratio. So we get rid of that ratio. So, get rid of this ratio here. And we're now just doing consistent running. Now, keep in mind that in this point in time, so we're just doing 10 minutes non-stop. In this time, we haven't changed any other variable. We are only changing time. If you change running time plus intensity, so your speed's up, plus you're also shortening your rest times and things like that, then you're changing more than one variable to make the exercise more intense, and that might be the reason that your calf then gets a little setback, okay? So we just want to increase one thing at a time. So we're going to increase this, we could increase this all the way up to, probably more like 30 minutes or something like that, slowly over a 3-4 week period, okay? But as long as there's a method to the madness and that you're referencing it to, how your calf's feeling when you're doing it, great, okay? All right, so that's just a basic overview of how we get you back to 60 minutes. So we could just keep doing that until we get you back up to 60 minutes, and we could be incorporating the very generic 10% per week. So, but if you've got a 10-minute tolerance and you go at 10% per week, that's 11 minutes, and then 12.5 and things like that. So using 10% isn't the best because the body probably recovers in the earlier stages better than that. So it might be a 30% jump, it might be a 40% jump. With reference to how you can make a decision yourself based on that, there are pain rules that have been published that I think just give you a nice general idea. So if you have pain, before, during, and after, okay, we'll rephrase that. So if you have pain during and after, but it goes away after 24 hours, and so you're able to train again in 48 hours time, then you don't want to increase, because if you get a little bit of calf discomfort during, you definitely got a little bit afterwards. It's better after 24 hours, so it settles quite quickly, and you know that you can, and then you run again in 48 hours time and a similar pattern occurs. We know we need to stay at this phase for a while until you get to the point that there's no pain during, so the pain during is gone and you're only getting the pain afterwards. And then that pain afterwards is minimal. Maybe it's like a 2 out of 10. If zero is no pain and 10 is the worst pain imaginable, it's only a 2. Then you can start to progress that variable again. It just depends. If you're someone that wants to wait till it's a 0 out of 10, then sure. You can probably push yourself a little bit more than that. But that's how you want to know. So pain during, pain after. Definitely pain before. If you've got pain before you start, well, depending on the injury type, but certainly for a calf muscle tear, pain before you start, it's probably not going to end very well if you start. yeah, so during and after, 24-hour calm down period, 48 hours before you start again is a nice general way to make sure you're doing it right. And that sort of means it gives you the capacity to, do a run session, by 2 to 3 times a week, or whatever dose you and your physio have worked out. So yeah, I mean, this is how we might get someone back. It's a lot longer than I thought it was going to take, 15 minutes, but I just wanted to chuck this out there and see if people responded to this in a good way. If you feel like this is something that you'd like to see more of, despite how ugly it looks, I just want to sort of show the working out in my head as a physio, and what I think that you should be experiencing when you pay your money to go see a physio. There should be some form of plan, whether it's the best plan, for the elite athlete, but it might be the best plan for you. And I think that's the beauty of going and seeing a physio, is that you're going to get the best plan for you. So hit me up in the comments section. Let me know how you felt with this video. Tell me how I can improve it. Clearly handwriting is a big one, but I literally just bought this pad a day ago, so I'm going to try to get better at it. Leave me some comments. Cheers. Thanks, guys.